There was a time when Dubai's waterfronts represented something that felt almost untouchable. Superyachts stretched across the coastline like floating symbols of global wealth. Private docks glowed beneath towers of glass and steel. Entire waterfront districts were designed not simply for living, but for projection, for status, for permanence. At night, the reflections seemed endless. Everything shimmered, everything moved, everything projected confidence. Now, in certain places, the atmosphere feels different. Yachts remain still for unusually long periods. Walkways appear quieter than before. Waterfront developments still look visually impressive, yet feel strangely disconnected from the energy they were designed to contain. Not abandoned in the literal sense, but less alive. In environments built around movement, luxury, and visibility, that absence becomes difficult to ignore, because silence carries its own meaning. At first glance, the skyline still appears powerful. Towers continue dominating the coastline. Infrastructure remains fully operational. Yet the issue is not simply whether the system exists. It is whether it still feels desired at the same intensity. And that distinction changes everything. Dubai did not merely construct luxury. It constructed momentum around luxury. Tourism, global capital, hospitality, prestige, and real estate continuously reinforced one another. Waterfront living became part of that larger identity, evidence that ambition here operated without visible limits. Beneath the surface, however, systems built on perpetual expansion often rely on a fragile condition: continuous confidence. Once confidence begins to soften, even slightly, the atmosphere changes before the numbers do. That is where pressure truly begins. Because the question is no longer whether Dubai still looks impressive, it is whether image and reality continue moving together with the same level of alignment. And perhaps, for the first time in years, that alignment feels less certain. For years, Dubai sold a version of luxury that felt engineered to push beyond natural limits. Private waterfront living in the middle of the desert, artificial islands visible from space, marinas designed for vessels larger than many homes. Every element was calibrated to communicate exclusivity at scale. For many global investors, entrepreneurs, and high-net-worth visitors, the appeal extended far beyond architecture. Dubai offered velocity. Wealth moved quickly. Luxury was not inherited slowly over centuries. It was constructed rapidly, efficiently, and in full view. The city positioned itself as a gateway between continents, combining modern infrastructure with financial accessibility in ways few destinations could replicate. For many, the waterfront became the clearest symbol of that promise. Not just real estate, not just tourism, but entry into a system that appeared permanently ascendant. At its peak, the momentum felt self-sustaining. Luxury developments expanded along the coastline. International buyers entered the market at scale. Hospitality and retail grew alongside rising tourism. Marina occupancy strengthened as global capital flowed into branded residences, penthouses, and waterfront districts. Each layer reinforced the next. Tourism supported retail. Retail supported real estate. Real estate reinforced global perception. Perception, in turn, attracted more capital. The cycle began to accelerate itself. What made this more significant was how closely image and experience aligned. Dubai did not only market luxury, it operationalized it. Airports connected the world with minimal friction. Infrastructure reduced delay. Development advanced at a pace that often felt almost unreal. In that environment, confidence became automatic. But automatic confidence carries a structural vulnerability. Systems built on continuous inflow become dependent on maintaining that intensity without interruption. The issue is not simply growth, it is the expectation of uninterrupted growth. Once that expectation is embedded into pricing, investment behavior, and infrastructure planning, even a modest slowdown can feel amplified. At first glance, the waterfronts still appear polished. What stands out now is not only what exists, but how much of it depends on constant movement to sustain its perceived value? Continuous tourism, continuous capital, continuous attention. When any of these begin to soften even slightly, the atmosphere shifts. Quietly, gradually, but unmistakably. Early signs of friction did not arrive in a dramatic form. No immediate headlines signaled collapse, and no single event redefined the skyline overnight. At surface level, operations continued normally. Yachts still occupied the marinas. Waterfront towers continued reflecting sunlight across the coastline. Restaurants served guests beneath carefully engineered layers of luxury. Beneath that visible continuity, however, the rhythm began to shift. In systems built on momentum, rhythm often carries more meaning than appearance. Observers started noticing subtle deviations. Certain properties remained listed longer than expected. Specific marina spaces felt quieter during periods that once carried consistent activity. Luxury districts dependent on international traffic appeared slightly less compressed, less urgent in pace, even if still fully functional. Not empty, just less intense. Occupancy was not the central issue. Energy was. Luxury environments rely heavily on perception loops. They are designed not only to operate, but to continuously signal demand. Full restaurants communicate prestige. Active marinas suggest concentrated wealth. Constant movement reinforces desirability. Once that movement softens, even marginally, the psychological impact spreads faster than physical change. At first glance, nothing appears structurally broken. Yet perception rarely waits for structural failure. A second pressure layer was forming beneath the surface: overexpansion. Years of rapid development created exceptional scale. That scale, however, introduced internal tension. Waterfront projects multiplied across the coastline. Luxury inventory expanded at speed. New districts began competing with established ones for the same pool of international buyers, tourists, and investors. Scarcity, one of luxury's foundational drivers, became harder to sustain. Global wealth, meanwhile, does not remain fixed. It moves fluidly across borders, comparing opportunities continuously. Alternative destinations started re-entering that comparison cycle. Some carried deeper historical identity. Others offered slower but more predictable property cycles. A few aligned more closely with shifting preferences toward authenticity and long-term livability. Dubai did not lose appeal overnight. What changed was the frame of reference. And once comparison becomes the dominant lens, certainty stops being automatic and starts becoming conditional. Investor behavior began to shift once comparison became more aggressive. Confidence stopped operating as an assumption and started behaving like a condition. More analytical, less emotional. The core issue was not that waterfront districts stopped functioning. It was that their stability appeared increasingly dependent on continuous inflow, continuous tourism, continuous foreign capital, continuous global attention. When those dependencies become visible, perception begins to adjust in real time. Because what changes is not always the physical environment. Often, it is the certainty attached to it. And, in luxury markets, certainty often carries more weight than the assets themselves. A broader phase of pressure followed as multiple forces converged. Not a collapse. Not a single identifiable shock, but a sequence of adjustments that revealed how sensitive the system had become to global sentiment. International economic conditions tightened. Borrowing costs increased. Investment strategies shifted toward selectivity. Tourism behavior evolved as travelers began prioritizing flexibility, value, and extended experiences over pure spectacle. At surface level, activity remained strong. The skyline still projected scale. Luxury developments continued to launch. Airports and waterfront districts operated at high capacity. Yet beneath that surface, momentum felt less automatic. And that distinction is critical. Because the issue is not whether demand exists, It is whether demand arrives with the intensity required to sustain expansion-driven systems. Luxury ecosystems respond quickly when confidence becomes conditional. Investment timelines extend. Buyers negotiate more strategically. Developers increase reliance on incentives, structured payment plans, and promotional mechanisms to maintain absorption rates. Not collapse. Adjustment. But adjustment reshapes psychology, and psychology shapes valuation far more than visible infrastructure. Simultaneously, geopolitical uncertainty and evolving global financial conditions introduced additional caution. Mobile capital, particularly international capital, became more sensitive to regulatory clarity, reputational stability, and long-term predictability. In luxury markets, perception functions almost like a parallel currency. When perception weakens, even marginally, valuation pressure begins to appear quietly across multiple segments. Marina turnover slows. Luxury transactions lose urgency. Secondary listings remain active for longer durations. Not abandoned, but paused in expectation. And in systems designed around speed, prolonged waiting becomes structurally significant. Because speed does more than move capital, it creates the impression that movement will continue indefinitely. However, beneath that surface dynamic, another constraint became harder to ignore: structural oversupply. Years of accelerated development produced extensive capacity across waterfront real estate, hospitality, and luxury districts. During expansion cycles, that scale reinforced the narrative of growth. But as demand moderated, even slightly, excess supply became more visible. And with that visibility came a quieter shift, not in what was built, but in how long it took to be absorbed. What once appeared vibrant now, in certain moments, looks overextended. And once overextension enters the narrative, confidence becomes harder to maintain. The question is no longer whether Dubai can construct luxury at scale. It is whether global demand continues to absorb that scale at the same pace. And for the first time in years, that answer feels less absolute than before. What follows in systems like this is rarely a visible collapse. It is a gradual thinning of perceived intensity. At surface level, Dubai's waterfronts still feel cinematic. Towers remain illuminated across the skyline. Marinas continue holding rows of high-value vessels. Restaurants operate beneath polished glass and engineered lighting. Yet the atmosphere has shifted. Quieter, less compressed, less driven by urgency. In environments designed around continuous demand signaling, even subtle changes become perceptible. Silence begins to carry meaning. Yachts remain docked for longer durations. Waterfront walkways alternate between activity and extended stillness. Retail environments maintain visual consistency, but the emotional charge surrounding them feels reduced. Not absence, reduction. And reduction alters perception faster than most systems anticipate. Because the central issue is no longer whether luxury exists. It is whether luxury retains its exclusivity when scale begins to exceed absorption. Financial systems respond quickly to that imbalance. Investment strategies shift toward liquidity preservation rather than expansion. Developers prioritize occupancy stability over pricing escalation. Hospitality operators compete more aggressively for international inflows. The ecosystem does not break. It recalibrates. But recalibration changes behavior at every level. Cities built on prestige depend heavily on projection, on the assumption of uninterrupted momentum. When that assumption weakens, even slightly, every connected sector begins adjusting in parallel. At the same time, global traveler behavior is evolving. Affluent visitors are increasingly defining luxury through experience, authenticity, cultural depth, and flexibility rather than scale alone. Smaller destinations with slower rhythms begin attracting attention because they feel less engineered and more organic. In a world where alternatives continue strengthening, spectacle alone no longer guarantees preference. That is where structural pressure begins to concentrate. Dubai's model was never dependent solely on local demand. It was built on sustained attraction, global capital, global tourism, global attention, moving continuously through the system. When that movement slows, even marginally, the interdependence of the entire structure becomes more visible. The shift is not sudden failure, it is comparative exposure. A system once defined by uninterrupted momentum now operates within the same global cycles that affect all major luxury markets, only at a larger and more visible scale. And once that visibility sets in, perception adjusts quickly. Because what changes is not only the waterfronts themselves, but the certainty that once surrounded them. What your script is really circling is a classic pattern in high capital, perception-driven cities, the shift from growth narrative to maintenance narrative. That shift is real in almost every global hub at some point, but what it means depends heavily on whether you're seeing a cycle reset or a structural ceiling. In Dubai's case, a slowdown in automatic confidence wouldn't automatically imply decline. In fact, many mature global cities go through exactly this phase after rapid expansion. Demand becomes more selective, pricing power stabilizes, and growth stops being exponential. That's usually what maturing looks like in real estate-heavy economies. But the deeper tension you're pointing at is more specific: dependency on continuous external inflow. When a system is highly exposed to global capital, tourism, and sentiment, it becomes more sensitive to changes in liquidity conditions, interest rates, and investor preference cycles. That doesn't make it fragile in a collapse sense, it makes it reactive. So there are two different interpretations of the same signals. One interpretation is cyclical normalization. Rapid expansion cools, supply gets absorbed more slowly, pricing becomes more rational, and the market shifts from momentum-driven to fundamentals-driven. In that reading, what you're describing is adjustment after an unusually fast growth phase. The other interpretation is structural saturation in specific segments. Not the city as a whole, but parts of the luxury waterfront and speculative real estate ecosystem potentially reaching a point where incremental demand no longer matches the scale of supply growth at the same pace. In that case, you don't get collapse, you get segmentation, strong prime zones, weaker peripheral absorption, and more uneven performance. The important point is that both can be true at once. A market can mature overall while still showing stress in specific overbuilt or highly speculative layers. Where your script is strongest is in how it focuses on perception lag. In real estate systems like this, perception often adjusts before hard data fully confirms direction. That creates a feeling of slowdown before any clear macro conclusion is justified. So to your question, whether this is maturity or something deeper, the most grounded answer is, it looks more like a transition from momentum-led expansion to sensitivity-led growth, rather than a systemic breakdown. But that transition is exactly where narratives become unstable, because people interpret less automatic growth through very different lenses. One sees normalization, another sees weakening, and markets, especially luxury-driven ones, are often shaped more by which narrative dominates than by the underlying physical reality itself.